Your roadmap to the latest in auto? Welcome to Highway Herald. Today, we're shifting gears from horsepower to global trade power. Canada has just put the pedal to the metal, making a bold move that could shake North America's economic dominance. While the US battles tariffs and trade disputes, Canada is quietly revving up as a prime supplier for NATO and the EU. Could this leave the US stuck in neutral? Buckle up as we break down 7 ways this strategy could reroute transatlantic trade. Number 7. Canada's high-octane play, the NATO trade Gambit. Canada isn't just making diplomatic pit stops, it's taking a full-throttle approach to trade strategy. During key meetings with NATO and EU leaders, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau wasn't just discussing military alliances, he was shifting into overdrive, pitching Canada as an attractive alternative to US suppliers. Competitive pricing, a stable economic climate, and an existing trade framework under the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement give Canada a major advantage. This wasn't just a handshake deal, it was a direct challenge to US economic influence in Europe. If NATO allies start fueling their supply chains with Canadian goods instead of American products, Washington's grip on trade negotiations could skid out of control. The big question remains, did US leaders see this coming, or were they caught off guard by Canada's sudden acceleration in the trade race? Number 6. Shifting gears. The US economic engine under pressure. For decades, US companies held pole position in NATO economies, dominating aerospace, energy, and technology. But now, Canada is cutting through the traffic, leveraging lower trade barriers and direct supplier agreements, making it easier for European businesses to shift gears away from US firms. If this trade shift gains momentum, the US could lose billions, weakening its grip on European trade regulations and economic policies. This isn't just about lost revenue, it's about lost influence. Washington has long used its economic horsepower to steer global trade in its favor. But with Canada accelerating in the rearview mirror, the US risks losing traction faster than expected. If Canada continues gaining market share, Washington may be forced to either hit the gas with countermeasures or risk stalling out in the race for economic dominance. Will the US adapt, or is Canada set to overtake? Number 5. Fueling the future. Canada's energy offensive. When it comes to energy, Canada is shifting into high gear, challenging both Russian and American dominance in Europe. The stats don't lie. 75% of Canada's uranium exports in 2024 went straight to Europe, fueling the continent's growing nuclear power expansion. But this isn't just about trade, it's about global energy security. That said, it's not all smooth cruising. Canada's liquefied natural gas exports have hit roadblocks, with high infrastructure costs and logistical hurdles slowing expansion. Even Prime Minister Trudeau admitted that building LNG terminals requires long-term investment, a challenge as European demand peaks in 2024 before shifting to renewables. Still, Canada isn't stalling. NuVista Energy recently locked in a long-term natural gas offtake deal with Trafigura, aiming for international markets by 2027. If Canada successfully accelerates its energy exports, it could cut into US market share and reshape global energy dynamics. Before we delve deeper, we'd appreciate it if you could subscribe to Highway Herald. Your support fuels our passion to create more content like this. Now, let's explore number 4. Tariff tensions. Canada's trade toolbox. As US-Canada trade tensions heat up, Canada is rerouting its economic strategy. Washington's 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum threw up a major roadblock, prompting Canada to strike back with tariffs on $155 billion worth of US goods. But instead of slamming the brakes, Canada has accelerated trade diversification, strengthening ties with Europe, Asia, and Latin America. One of Canada's strongest trade assets? The Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, which has expanded Canada's reach across the Asia-Pacific. Meanwhile, CETA has boosted Canada-EU trade by 57% since 2017, solidifying Canada as a reliable supplier. If the US sticks to its tariff-heavy approach, Canada has a clear escape lane, leading directly to global markets eager for stable trade partners. With domestic manufacturing and energy exports on the rise, Canada is crafting a long-term roadmap for economic independence. Number 3. Europe's open arms. Canada's welcome invitation. As trade tensions between Washington and Brussels continue to escalate, European leaders are increasingly turning to Canada as a reliable alternative in transatlantic commerce. Since CETA's provisional implementation in 2017, Canada-EU trade has surged by over 57%, marking a significant shift in economic alliances. While the US struggles with trade wars and tariffs, Canada is steadily positioning itself as a stable, dependable supplier. France and Germany, Europe's economic powerhouses, have already expressed strong interest in diversifying supply chains, particularly in critical minerals and energy. Recent high-level discussions between Trade Minister Mary Ng and EU officials reinforced Canada's growing role as a trusted trade partner, solidifying its economic presence in Europe. With US tariffs frustrating European markets, Canada's appeal as a primary supplier is at an all-time high. But is this a permanent shift away from US dominance, or just a temporary detour? Number 2. The numbers speak volumes: Canada's rising trade influence. When you crunch the numbers, the trade shift is impossible to ignore. In 2023, EU-US trade reached 851 billion euros, with the European Union enjoying a 157 billion euros trade surplus over the US. But the real game changer? Canada-EU trade under CETA has surged 65% from 2016 to 2022, highlighting a major economic shift. However, Canada's exports to the EU dropped 15.7% in late 2024, widening its trade deficit. But don't assume Canada's economic engine is stalling just yet. Ongoing negotiations in energy and critical minerals could soon tilt the numbers back in its favor. Trade Minister Mary Ng has been actively securing stronger partnerships, ensuring Canada stays competitive in transatlantic trade. Even a 5% to 10% reallocation of European imports from the US to Canada could translate into billions in economic impact. If Canada capitalizes on this opportunity, the US may be forced to adapt or lose its grip on trade dominance. Number 1. The US dilemma: strike back or step aside. Washington is at a critical turning point. Should it counter Canada's rise by offering trade incentives to European allies, or should it apply economic pressure to keep transatlantic supply chains under US control? Both strategies come with significant risks. Offering better trade incentives might help the US retain dominance, but it could also weaken its economic leverage. On the other hand, pushing back too aggressively might push European companies even closer to Canada, accelerating US market losses. For now, the US is on high alert, but if Canada continues to gain traction, expect a countermove that could spark a trade war. Will Washington fight to maintain its grip on transatlantic trade, or is Canada on the verge of overtaking its neighbor in the global economic race? The stakes have never been higher. The final lap: could Canada win this trade battle? This isn't just about business deals. Canada is redrawing the global economic map. Will Washington fight back, or is Canada on the path to becoming a standalone trade powerhouse? The coming months will determine if this is a detour or a permanent shift. What do you think? Is Canada positioning itself as a true global trade powerhouse, or is this just a temporary power shift to pressure the US? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your take on this trade showdown. And before you go, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on the latest deep dives, updates, and automotive insights from Herald. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.